Hello, and welcome to another episode of We All Have a Story. I am Jennifer Warhawk. I am your host for every episode of We All Have a Story. And my co-host is Rocky, who provides me with some moral support, some motivation, some cuteness, and a little bit of humor along the way. And of course, plenty of cat hair. So welcome to my channel. Thank you for visiting. Thank you for being here. And my eyes are watery, so forgive me. So today I thought I would cover a little bit of true crime, because if you are, if you're at my channel is about my story, and my story covers a whole lot of mental health topics. And what better way to dive into the topic of mental health than to get into a little bit of true crime. I really wasn't into true crime until last year. The Johnny Depp trial really kind of started me in my deep dive into true crime, which really, the Johnny Depp trial isn't true crime, unless you consider Amber, the Amber person, if you consider her, what she did to him as criminal, which I do. But the reason why that got me into true crime is because the rabbit hole is, through that trial, I came to start watching the YouTube channel, The Behavior Panel, and through the Behavior Panel, I've been watching them ever since. These guys are awesome. You really should go check them out. If you like body language and they're not really mental health, but they cover true crime type issues, which is mental health to a large degree. So anyway, The Behavior Panel. So because I watched The Behavior Panel now, I got turned on to the case of Alex Murdaugh. And I say his name that way for a particular reason, because nobody can figure out how to pronounce the man's name. I would prefer to pronounce his name Alex Murdaugh, because that's how his name is spelled. However, from the trial, it appears that his name is pronounced Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh. And so if you don't know who Alex Murdaugh is, he is a man in South Carolina who murdered his wife and his younger son. And, just the fact that he murdered his wife and his younger son is crazy enough as it is. But it wasn't until I really started digging into, really listening to the trial, that some things started going off in my head, like something's not right here. What's going on? Usually if you have a murder trial, you have a motive, and you know who did it, and you know why they did it, and you're just waiting for the shoe to drop on them, right? You're waiting for them to get convicted and get injustice to be served. But there was just something that I couldn't figure out about this case, and it just, so many weird things about it that I was like, what is going on here? This is so strange. Well, the Murdaugh family goes back, well, of course all families go back, but the legacy of the Murdaugh family goes back 100 or so years. So there was really a patriarchal beginning to the legacy of the Murdaugh family. And that was in the 1920s with the first Randy Murdaugh, who started, who was the first. It's a lawyer family. So, they've been running the justice system in this small town, for over 100 years. So the father, the child, the grandchild, the great-grandchild, and even the great-great-grandkids are a big part of the justice system in this town. And through that, they gained much power. And so what really got me through this trial that I didn't quite understand, it just didn't make sense to me, was Alex murdering his wife and son. There seemed to be no motive, at least in my mind. I couldn't, based on what I was hearing and all the evidence, I couldn't figure out, why did this man kill his wife and his son? It just doesn't make any sense. And then as I was so I started watching the Behavior Panel's behavioral analysis of Alex first interview with the police in the police car. And so that was the first thing. But then I started watching some of the trial. And actually, I didn't really watch the trial. I watched a lot of people's clips of the trial. And I did watch parts of his testimony, but one thing I came to notice was Buster, which is his only remaining family member, immediate family member, his son, his older son, stood behind his dad throughout the whole trial, even testified on behalf of his dad. And that, I couldn't figure it out. Why would Buster stand behind his dad? I mean, the evidence was overwhelming that his father did it. And let's just say the evidence wasn't overwhelming. His dad's behaviors made it so clear, because his dad, Alec, decided, has said all along, I didn't do it. But what he never did do, he was never seemed to be very concerned with who did do it. Like, there was never any desire, there's never any rush, there was never any never any anything to try to go and find out who did murder his wife and child. And to me, that is just telling. If you love your wife and your child and they are dead, they've been murdered brutally, and you didn't do it, but people are saying you did it, and you're not sitting up there going, we need to find who did this. My family is dead, and we need to find out who did this. But there was none of that. There's none of that. He didn't seem to be concerned about that. So having Buster sit behind his father, it was just perplexing to me to the nth degree. I mean, okay, my family member, my dad killed my mother and my brother. I would love my dad. I can't stop loving my dad. But would I support him? No, I would be like, I'm sorry, Dad, I can't support you. You lost your mind, and I can't support you. I'm sorry. But Buster did. Not only did he support him, but he stood up and testified on his behalf. And that was crazy for me. I couldn't figure it out. So until I watched this video, and I knew it. I knew I should have written it down. It was a channel on YouTube that I'd never watched before. It's the first time I'd ever watched their channel. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it is, but I'll put a screenshot up here and show you what the name of the channel is. I can't remember. I wish I could. Something about true crime. Hidden True Crime is what I think it is. And they are psychologists, I believe. And they came up with some... Well, first of all, they dove deep into the history of the Murdaugh family, which was helpful for me to kind of understand some things, because you cannot understand this family without digging deep into the history of the legacy. Because there's, all throughout, there has been murder, there has been things covered up. And of course, when you are a legal family, and you are the top legal family, and you're running the justice system, judges and prosecutors, there's going to be some cover-up. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility, but it also comes great corruption. And this family was knee, nose, ear, eye, head deep in corruption. So they dug deep. And one thing that what they came up with, and it's not just them coming up with it, I mean, the experience and the knowledge, is that this family is what's called a truly enmeshed family. And I'd never heard of such a thing. I mean, I kind of know the word, but, I never really thought of what the word really meant. So they're a truly enmeshed family. And what that means is, this is a family where you don't go against the grain in this family. This is a family where there's no such thing as an individual identity, where it is only the family identity. And the family is all up in everybody's business. There's no part of this family where another family, where the whole family's uninvolved in what you're doing. And I don't mean just the mother, father, and two sons. I'm talking about aunts and uncles and grandparents and everything else. So you can't be a part of this family and not toe the line. Because if you don't toe the line, well, you might end up dead. And so that really hit me. And what really brought them to that conclusion, because in part of all the corruption and all the craziness of this family, the younger son, who is now dead, Paul, He was in a boating accident, and he was drunk, he was underage, he was driving, and a young lady got killed in that boating accident. And when Buster, the older brother, testified, he said, he sat up there on there and said that, you know, the whole family rallied behind Paul because none of us believed that he was driving that boat. Now this shows you the crazy psychology of the family, because clearly Paul was driving the boat. Clearly he was driving the boat. But none of the family believed that he was. So that tells you a little bit something about the psychology of this family. That tells you a little bit of something about why Buster was sitting behind his father. Because this family, you don't go against him. You know, they stick together like mud as long as the family name is intact. As long as you are perpetuating the idea of power in this family. But now that Alec has been convicted of murder, and if he loses his appeal, what I suspect will happen is now he's brought shame to the family, and that is inexcusable. You don't bring shame to the Murdaugh family. So I believe that if he loses his appeal, which he will, if he even goes, you know, for appeal, I think the family is going to start backpedaling. I think they're going to start coming against him, because look what happened to Maggie, and look what happened to Paul. Paul was the little detective. Paul was finding out some secrets about his family, and Paul was the black sheep, at least according to the Netflix. I haven't watched the Netflix documentary, but from what I've heard, Paul was the black sheep. Maggie didn't love him or treat him the way she did Buster, and he was really bringing to light his father Alex's drug addiction. And so what is the motive here? The motive, I think, for Paul was clear. Paul was digging deep into the family and about ready to expose some things, I think. And of course, with the boating accident, that brought shame to the family. Paul hadn't gone to trial for that yet. Well, he's never going to go to trial because now he's gone. I think he brought shame to the family, and so he had to be done away with. Now, where does Maggie fit in all that? I think Maggie was also starting to pick up on some things, you know, in the family, especially with Alex and his Alec. Can't call him Alec because it's Alex. You can't call that Alec. But I think she was starting to pick up on some things. I think she was getting tired of the drug addiction. I think things were heading towards, I don't know, maybe divorce. And so you just couldn't have that. Or maybe she just got in the way. You know, maybe the motive, the intent was to kill. Of course, there were two guns. So if there were two guns, chances are you weren't there to kill one person. So I don't think she just got in the way. But, you know, dig deep, and I will share with you a link to both of the behavioral panels video and the hidden true crime video that explains, well, the behavior panel is just a great channel to watch, and I love watching their behavioral analysis. And the hidden true crime is really what brought all this stuff together, because they go back way back about the family, about the beginning of the family. So the founding father of the family is what I call him. He committed suicide, but the family covered that up. They said it was an accident. It was a train accident. He drove onto train tracks and killed himself, but the family insists that it was an accident. Of course, you can't bring that kind of shame, because what they say in this video is, with great power, you have to, they wanted to uphold that image of great power. Well, mental health and suicide, poor mental health and suicide, that's weakness. That's not powerful. So they don't want that to get out, that there is weakness in the family. So they covered it up, and because they covered it up, they filed a lawsuit because it was an accident. They got a whole bunch of money, and really that money that came from that lawsuit is really what kind of fueled the family wealth on into the generations. So, and then there's more. There's so much more. You know, there's the death of the housekeeper. There's the death of Stephen Smith. There's the death of, who was the third person? Oh, who was the third? Well, okay, Mallory, in the boating accident. So there's a lot of death. And one thing they said in the video, the hidden true crime video, was that any of these family members, Maggie, Paul, Buster, and Alec. All of them, it could be argued that all of them are murderers, all 4 of them. Because obviously Alec murdered Maggie and Paul. Maggie, it could be argued that she murdered the housekeeper. It could be argued that Buster murdered Stephen Smith, and Paul murdered Mallory. Now, Paul is probably the only one that probably didn't murder on purpose. But nonetheless, it would probably be called involuntary manslaughter, negligence, whatever. So that really brought it all together for me. This is why Buster stood behind his dad. And if you listen to the prison calls between Buster and Alec, and with this knowledge in mind, because when I listened to him when I listened to him, I didn't have all this knowledge about the family history. So the phone call seemed a little benign. But then when I heard about the family history, those phone calls didn't seem so benign to me. I could see the manipulation and from prison, Alec was all up in Buster's life, trying to run and control his life. Buster at one time on one of the phone calls, Buster's in law school, go figure. And, he had his job to help pay for law school. And of course there's all this money, which, where'd it come from? Because Alec owes like $10 million to people. So he's not really rich. He's just trying to figure out how to be rich. But Alec, was telling Buster, hey, you shouldn't have to pay for your law school. Borrow money from so-and-so over here and tell him I'll pay him back. So, how does this man think that, that he's going to pay somebody back from prison? I don't know. But anyway, so that is my one little video, my one little episode on the true crime of the Alex Murdaugh case. And now, I understand a little bit of that psychology of that family, and it's kind of crazy. It's a lot crazy. I don't understand it. I do not have an enmeshed family. My family would probably throw many of my family members, not all of them, but would probably throw you under the bus if it meant saving their butt. So I wouldn't know what it's like to be in what's called an enmeshed family. So anyway, I hope everyone is doing well. I thank you I've gotten some good feedback from people I know from some of my videos, and it's really cool. I appreciate that. I love the feedback. I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe if you like my content at all. And let's heal together. Let's get our stories out there, because really it is quite healing to tell your story, to have the freedom and the ability to tell your story. So I thank God for this avenue, this YouTube avenue. I thank God for you, and I pray that nobody watching my video right now is suffering from abuse. And if you are, I pray that you will get out. I pray that you will get healing, and I pray that my God would wrap his arms around you and show you his love. So until I see you again, have a wonderful week or a wonderful weekend, and just be well. God bless.